Hi, this is Ms. Hadi again. I was giving you a video lecture on the Hebrews, and this is part 2 of that lecture. We were talking about Moses and his monotheism, belief in one God. We were also talking about the God Yahweh, as God is called to Hebrews. So it's just a name for God, Yahweh. We talked about that in the Jewish tradition, what we'll eventually call the Jewish tradition for the Hebrews, the Yahweh is considered a personal God. And there are rewards and punishments for following his commandments. Yes, so the 10 commandments are this set of ethical, that means what to do that's right versus wrong, ethical and religious principles that you are to follow. You can read a little bit more about the 10 commandments here. Eventually, the teachings of the Israelites are collected and compiled between 800 and 400 BCE. These scriptures are called the Torah, which is the Hebrew word for doctrine or teaching. Now, we know that the way that the Hebrews migrated is described differently in their Torah, which eventually will find its way into what's called the Christian Bible, it's the Old Testament, than it is described by archaeological records, by other pieces of evidence. So in terms of history, and what we take as being, we have archaeological evidence for, was that the Hebrews maintained communities nearby Palestine, in the hills of Palestine, around 1200 BCE, and they had kingdoms around 1000 BCE, and that they fought intermittently, that means every once in a while, with nearby areas, and that they did a lot of things that their neighbors did. For example, they had iron weapons too, and they also prayed to many gods. So we know the idea of monotheism was not originally something that the Hebrews practiced. It happens later after Moses. So make sure that you know that Moses is like a turning point. The recognition of Yahweh as the one true God emerges or comes into being around the 8th century rather than from the early days. So this tells you that the Hebrews shared many polytheistic beliefs. Poly means many, from theos meaning God. Okay, so they had belief in many gods until Moses, and we've already talked about denying the existence of other deities, parallel deities, that it's a personal God that you could get rewarded or punished based on following the 10 commandments and the principles that eventually get compiled in the Torah. I'm not sure where this came from. I gotta remove that. Okay, so what's going to happen is, I'm going to try to keep this simple so that I don't take up too much time and do another video. Basically, we need to remember our 2 Mesopotamian kingdoms that we learned about before. So there's 4, but there's 2 at the very end that you have to know. The Assyrians had the standardized professional military with their iron weapons and chariots, and then later after them, the new Babylonians. So what's going to happen is, as the Assyrians expand, they get really big, they're going to get so big that they're going to end up encroaching on the territory that the Hebrews are in. Now remember, the Hebrews are going to basically end up creating 2 kingdoms. In the north, there's the kingdom of Israel, and in the south, there's the kingdom of Judah. You can read about how they had a war between themselves, but for now, I just want you to keep in mind what happens after the Assyrians expand. When the Assyrians expand and they conquer into this region, they're first going to conquer the northern part, which is called Israel, and they're going to exile many of these people. So basically, they kick them out of that land, and these people assimilate into the cultures of the lands that they move to. So they become like the people that they move to. They not forget, but more or less forget about their Hebrew culture. Later on, now this is Babylonian, but it's wrong. It's the new Babylonians. The new Babylonians, which are the later ones, because remember, the early Babylonians are 1700s BCE, and the new Babylonians are 600s BCE. The new Babylonians are going to also expand into this region and conquer, and they're also going to exile, this time the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah. These people get exiled, they move, they leave, and they're going to be called Jews. But unlike the earlier Israelites, they will remember and cling more tightly to their beliefs and their identity, these Jews. And then later on, many Jews are going to return to this land, and they'll be called Jews. Okay, so wanted you to know about that. And next, we'll be talking about Phoenicia.